Hello there, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I am joined all the way across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
Good, and we're gonna get into some lore, big
All
time.
right. Yeah, going even before the High Republic, well before stuff that hasn't even really been fleshed out much in canon so far, but in Legends too, yeah, we've got a great show lined up as we're implying here. Going to do some good old-fashioned fan speculating, theorizing on the canon version of the Jedi-Sith Wars, things that again in Legends have been delved into in Tales of the Jedi and the Revan saga and so many other wonderful stories. We are going to head to Malachor. We are going to look under the hood, see what those legend stories might offer, maybe as a laboratory of sorts, story
I
laboratory. So,
I like how you call it the Revan Saga because it really was retroactively made the Revan
yeah,
Saga by the
there's
end.
so much stuff by Edmonton, Alberta's Drew Carpetian there. Before we dive into that, I got to get the plugs in at the top. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. You can catch all our full length episodes on, of course, here on the Underworld YouTube channel, on Underworld Facebook, Iron Cannon Twitch, Iron Cannon Twitter, Underworld Twitter, everywhere you want, everywhere you can, as well as including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Right after we record, I go and I upload these episodes to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, there you can find my weekly Tractor Beam comic book reviews. The books come out Wednesday. I get to reviewing them usually on Friday. Send that out. Maybe not get to posting on social media just yet, but the episodes will be in your feeds, in your Iron Cannon Spotify and Apple Podcast feeds on Friday nights. By Friday night. Just one book reviewed this past week. Sana Staros, #1. She's got her own comic book run. It's a short run. It's great, fun family dynamics. Up to hijinks. They're up to something. I won't spoil what, but it's yeah, it was a great start by Justina Ireland and co. Yeah, and then yeah, hopefully I did get the Star Wars Insider number 216. I do include those whenever the Insider issue comes in, and the High Republic short story there by George Mann, Tales of Enlightenment. I forget what this particular short story is called, but yeah, I will talk about that this coming week. So check that out. Also, this is the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. We got YouTube memberships here. We got super chats. We got all sorts of ways. We got the comments down below. Lots of ways to get in touch with us, including the Discord, Star Wars Underworld Discord server. You on in, click that link below, introduce yourself, say hi. We're in there chatting away about different things, and yeah, please do feel free to say hi and introduce yourself and get to know us. And Ben Hart, Star Wars guy, is in there. A few other folks are in there. So yeah, and then Joel, speaking of Discord, anything you would like to plug?
We will be having a movie night this Friday, and I know Matthew, I'm afraid you're movie lost, but
I
we
know,
will
that's
be
okay.
watching the Clone Wars 2008 animated film. Join us in the
Underrated.
voice chat. Join us in the voice chat this Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We will have lots of fun, and
Right
then
on.
and make sure to join the Discord so the next time you can vote.
Yeah, it's true too. Yeah, so you got to join the Discord in order to join the voice chat in the Discord. Just putting that out there. But yeah, those are fun. The games nights that we do, those have been lots of fun. So this is a good expansion on that to sitting around watching a movie. And I could watch Phantom Menace on Disney Plus whenever I want, or Blu-ray or DVD. I don't think I have it on DVD. I have it on VHS, but
I make
why
sure
would
to
I
have
do it?
at least all of them on DVD if I
Yes,
can.
I definitely have it on Blu-ray. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, the Clone Wars film, underrated film, in light of the whole series. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just rated. I don't quite know. I'll well watch it and find out. Remind myself what this film is about. But yeah, it should be, especially gathering around, chatting, hanging out is the main point there. So yeah, looking forward to that. Joel, I know you are for sure. I can speak for you into that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
that's the
excited.
plugs. This week in Star Wars, Joel, you had a thought. I didn't have too much of a thought, but you go for it.
Yeah, as Mandalorian starts, as you know, we're looking to Thrawn possibly showing up in one of these shows.
Mhm.
I more and more kind of wonder, are we really leading up to the rise of the First Order, or are we just going to do, or as I've been talking about, are we just seeing an epoch? As one of the people who I wrote a whole shebang about this thing, shebang, said, where it will be time will tell if this is just the Mandiverse in its own pocket or if this is an artery in the ROTJ to TFA connection. Love the term artery.
Yeah, like
Um, because we do have some seeds of the rise of the First Order. If you're on the Discord, I'm posting a lot of pictures of stuff that those great source books, by the way. Get those source books. About Sloane and Chosen going to the Eclipse and
mhm,
they build the First Order in the unknown regions and whatnot. But I'm kind of more and more in the camp of Moff Gideon may not be working for anybody. I think he's kind of just his own little ego self,
mhm,
just doing his thing. And we can debate whether or not we think Thrawn going to be the bad guy. But even if he is, I think he's very much the warlord of his own faction, probably somewhere in the unknown regions,
mhm,
somewhere else. Um, and I just feel like maybe there'll be implications to like, here's how this can lead to this. But I don't know if we're gonna like by the end it's like see Snoke going all according to plan. I don't think that's
yeah,
where our final destination is. I could be wrong, but I am very curious
mhm,
if we're gonna see that, and I'm also curious about. This will lead to our topic later in a couple of minutes. What's going to cover this? Will it be a paper canon thing that covers kind of the technicalities of the rise of the First Order, or will this be something we see on screen? Remember, the First Order is a separate organization. I know it's weird to say, but they see themselves as different from the Empire,
right.
and Ian sees himself still as the Empire, just trying to get back its power. Although I think he's just okay ruling his own little fiefdom of lore and whatever he rules over. So yeah, that's just kind of been my thoughts. Just kind of
Mhm,
like how we get from Endor Imperial remnants to eventually the First Order, this new neo-imperialist regime. So that's just kind of
mhm.
not.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a bit of that in paper, especially. I mean,
Hmm.
the what we do see is the gender divide between Brendel Hux and Armitage Hux, for example, right? Brendel is very much
You mean
we are going,
generational?
yeah, we are gonna. What word did I
You
say?
said gender divide.
No, I meant generational. I meant generational. They're both um, we're yeah, protein stuff. Okay, where Brendel is very much we're gonna so like Amelin Holdo and Poe, right? We are going to restore the Empire. We're going to restore the Republic. No, forget that. We're going to improve upon the Empire with the First Order. This is Armitage
Hmm.
and Phasma, and that was an old thing that failed because it collapsed. We're going to
Right.
be this eternal thing, even though we're calling ourselves the First Order. We don't know about the Final Order necessarily.
We all know loyalty to Palpatine the same way you do, Dad.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing too. Is and oh, what's his
And
name?
possibly
The
Pride. General Pride too.
Yeah, General Pride. That this imperial loyalty to Palpatine, a final order loyalty to Palpatine, but the First Order is saying we're just this new thing that the designs from Kuat shipyards fine, or Signer, whoever it is, um, but yeah, that whole dynamic, which we do very much see play out in its
Hmm.
own way in the Last Jedi on the Republic slash Resistance side as well. So is that interesting? You mentioned about thing about Moff Gideon. I do get the vibe at least, and there's nothing I can necessarily point to, but the vibe that he actually is serving someone else. Maybe because we kept talking about who he's working for, who he's working for.
It's
He
possible.
he seems more ruthless. I feel
Mhm.
kind of like the Bo-Katan episode, how ruthless he was of just go down with the ship, crash the ship, um, because there's pressure on him from someone else. Obviously, the thing with the dark side is people will always try to uh, take over. I mean, that's what we'll
There,
hopefully get into the Sith, and
there's one.
and
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just say so. Maybe for now, I do get the sense that he's under the pressure of someone else, maybe Thrawn, maybe. maybe someone's connected to Snoke and Palpatine. I don't know, but
There,
yeah,
say,
that ruthlessness, and then but the point being, the secondary point being, for now he has ambitions because he's an Imperial on the dark side and always going for ambitions. Okay, now go for it.
there is one scene at the end of season 2 that no one really talks about, and it's the one thing where I do agree that you could really make it where he's serving someone, be it Thrawn, Palpatine, Snoke, one of them. And that is when Luke Skywalker's coming. Gideon, he goes for the blaster, and he could have pointed, and he pointed it himself. You know, like, and that to me, the guy is like, that to me is like, well, if you go, clearly you are not dependent on your operation continuing. If you think that if you go, now to be fair, he just might be scared of Luke Skywalker. Like, oh shoot, Jedi!
That is fair.
I don't want to deal with this. But he was very willing to end himself. You know, and if he's a warlord who's just his operation lives and dies with him, then you know why would you do that? I mean, you know, maybe you just don't want to get captured and sent to jail. Period. So there's always that. But it's kind of the one thing of like, oh shoot, I gotta get out of here, and you're not afraid that wherever you set the blood work of Grogu is still gonna do what it gotta do. So that's kind of my one caveat of like, maybe you're right, maybe he's working for some sort of a higher up, Thrawn or Snoke or Palpatine.
Well, we'll see. I mean, got less than a month to go for season 3, so that's exciting, eh? Less than a month to go for Mandalorian season 3. We will maybe do 1 or 2 full episodes on that because the podcast series is going to handle it, but we will do it on Eyes on Screen. Speaking of Eyes on Screen, see what I did there. Yeah, episode 6, I believe, of the Bad Batch. Yeah, and one that has lots to talk about in terms of paper canon, Jedi Fallen Order, all that. Oh, that's a different. So that's a different episode. My mind was still in the Zepho thing. This is the Wookiee thing.
Well, they've been Fallen Order too, so Kashyyyk.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, so what were your thoughts on this latest episode of the Bad Batch?
Gunji, yay! Oh no, I thought this episode was really good. You know, I thought, you know, a lot of typical, not just Star Wars, but I mean Star Wars, yes, but you know, Star Wars always plays on these sort of on the nature versus machine vibe. You know, like the trees are our friends. You know, kind of a thing. Like, gotta listen to nature. Nature will help provide. You know, it's like, you know, I love it when Hunter kind of says something equivalent like, good thing the trees are on our side. You know, very Tolkien-esque. It's like, oh, good thing those trees from Fank are on our side. You know. Sure. Fun fact: this is the second time Kashyyyk has ever appeared in screen canon. Which is funny because it's appeared a lot in paper canon in both Legends and canon.
True.
But on screen it's only appeared twice. Ren of the Sith, and now. Well, 3 times if you count the holiday special. That's when the first appeared, fun fact, as Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk.
That
that was cool. It was cool to see Gunji. I'm very, very curious where exactly a lot of this poor Omega can't be a kid because the galaxy sucks theme is gonna go. Nice reference to, of course, the clone, the Bad Batch arc that didn't happen on Kashyyyk. And also lots of Old Republic Knights of the Old Republic references with the spider creatures, and apparently the theme music was also from the Knights of the Old Republic Kashyyyk level. What I've heard. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty strong episode. And so I'm excited for this and the next 2 because it's going to be a 2-parter next week. So pretty strong episode this week.
Yeah,
I agree. Trandoshan versus Wookiees things always, that thing's been going on forever.
Oh yeah, fair. Yeah, yet another chapter in the ongoing Trandoshan versus Wookiee saga. Yeah, I agree. It was a very strong episode. I mean, I've enjoyed every episode this season so far. The fact that my mind blanked on what happened this episode momentarily, now I remember. Yeah, it was another very much a Clone Wars season 9, but also the Kurosawa theme. Our heroes go to this village a little different. The Wookiees can protect themselves at this point. That's a different angle there. I was really fascinated, just Wookiee spirituality. Yeah, like you're saying, that connection to the trees, submission to the trees. We can't control nature. We have to be in harmony with it. And very much a sign and a symbol and a sacrament, if you will, of what the Force is and what submitting to the will of the Force is. And Omega tapping in a little bit. That was kind of exciting to go along. I mean, all of them going along well and meaningfully with taking the moment to commune with the trees and to sense where they're at in terms of, are they going to help? Are they going to very very Tolkien-esque. I'm trying to think of very like the Purgle, right? Like Ezra and the Purgle. Are they going to help?
Yeah.
That theme coming in, these creatures that are in some ways more powerful than us. These trees are older than us, and the spider things coming in. I was hoping it would be the ones from Jedi Fallen Order. Could be just a different part of the planet. That's fine. The reason I was hoping that is because, again, thinking of last week, how much of this is Jedi Fallen Order is going to play into screen stories. That's for another conversation, another episode. Another thing I wanted to point out: Wookiee Jedi, and Gunji coming back. Of course, this isn't the first time we introduced him. We know where he's. Yeah, from the Clone Wars episode, the Ilum episode. There's a Jedi Fallen Order reference. Anyway, so I was doing my usual YouTube scrolling, watching Alex on Star Wars Explained, talk about why they're rare. George Lucas's whole, they just shouldn't be any Wookiee Jedi, and he didn't really
change his mind.
Yeah, he didn't give much of a good reason, but then he changed his mind and whatnot. And Alex pointed out this is they have this rich spirituality of the relationship with the trees. And while I was watching this, I had a thought, like what we've seen with Jedha in Phase 2 and with Rogue One, all these different Force beliefs, Force traditions, religions and whatnot. They, for the most part, a lot of them work together. A lot of them are in communion with the Jedi, if I can use that term. We're willing to work alongside the Jedi, but not necessarily join the Jedi, because the Jedi have their own code and their own way of doing things. Great point that Alex made of, we have two High Republic Wookiee Jedi, because it might have been a time where Jedi would have been freer to respect nature, respect, the Force is bigger than themselves, as opposed to trying to control them. And so more, I mean, what we see with the Kevin Scott comic, for example, of Jedi just being part of a larger Force religion ecosystem, that changes, of course, the more you get to the core, where Jedi are, like we were talking about, was it last week or a few weeks ago, like a Jedi Christendom, if you will, a Jedi Republic. And so to see what the place of Wookiees in this spiritual ecosystem as well, alongside the Jedi, and how Gunji has to navigate that. And I don't know if we'll see more of Gunji. I don't know if we'll see more of these stories. We probably will at some point, but
I'd like to see more Kashyyyk.
Yeah, it's I mean, Kashyyyk is wonderful. I mean, you have Cal Kestis going to Kashyyyk, and the Great Rosher Tree being a place of Jedi trial, or not just Force user trial, as a locus of the Force, and that being explored more. I mean, I hope we do. I hope we get more of it, but it also in this episode really served the story of the Bad Batch and Omega communing with forces greater and deeper than themselves. We don't usually get to see them do. So I mean, that's the thing, again, with Omega's identity and destiny. Is she the Omega, as in the Force sensitive clone? That we don't know, but curious about that too.
It's kind of funny that the whole Wookiee being spiritual thing it does go back to the holiday special. I mean, that last scene, they're in red robe with their little ball of peace thing. I don't know. Wait, maybe they didn't have, but they had, like, I don't know, they had candles or something.
Yeah.
Then Carrie Fisher's things. It's like, that's the light. Their thing is called Life Day, and then they have like a big fancy tree that they go to, and then Carrie Fisher sings. I think Kashyyyk should be in more things. I think, like Tatooine, it's an untapped potential of a planet.
Which is funny you say that, because Tatooine's in everything, but
I don't know. I feel like it is and it isn't, but I feel like
Yeah.
Mandalorian I think done a great job making Tatooine theme interesting for me.
Mhm.
Especially with the Marshall and stuff like that. And I think Kashyyyk
Yeah.
is also another one of those untapped potential planets of like those could be like a really fantasy kind of place, like
Sure.
just with tree, like the Fangorn Forest, like you just know cool stuff happens.
Mhm. Yeah, and they could totally do more live action Kashyyyk.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
easy, like not easy. I don't want to downplay that, but
Nothing.
yeah, it's very much possible to do more. I mean, I mean, is Avatar is that live action, is that animation? It's so photorealistic. Why we pushed the episode an hour, a half hour, because I was watching Avatar again. So the Way of Water.
The James Bond, yeah, not the Last Airbender, people.
No, yeah, sorry, the James Cameron Avatar, The Way of Water, the what's
The
his
Blue
face?
Cat one.
Yeah, yes, that one. So yeah, the James Cameron one. So yeah, they can do it. Again, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of talent, but I mean, I think they have the effort and the talent and the infrastructure to do it. So yeah, let's see more Kashyyyk. Here we go. All right, two more bits of news to get into. First, a bit of an acolyte. The acolyte news. The acolyte is the one show where we are going to do more on because it's set in the High Republic at the end of the High Republic era. So, if there's some news that comes along, we'll do that Hollywood Reporter interview. Colin Trevorrow speaking to the Hollywood Reporter, he dropped this tidbit that Charmaine de Great is a writer and co-executive producer on The Acolyte. And Joel, thanks for putting this note in that she wrote for House of the Dragon, which that bodes well for me. I love that show so much. So do you want to dive into a little more on that, on your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't watch House of Dragon, but everyone says they love it, so I don't know what episode she wrote. For all we know, she could have wrote the least everyone's least favorite. I don't know. I didn't do that research.
I
She
doubt
could have
that.
wrote everyone's favorite. I don't know. To me, showrunner is always the key in terms of like what you want out of it. But that being said, if Leslie Headland as showrunner is bringing in these people to be part of her writing team, this is maybe an indication of kind of the tone and the genre that Acolyte as a show is going to be tapping into. Much as you look at kind of the writers behind Andor, you got Tony Gilroy in the Bourne films. You got what do I call him, Steve? I got the House of Cards person. You got the original showrunner who wrote an episode. He did The Americans, which is another spy. So Andor is the political spy thriller. Looks like Acolyte. I know Russian Doll is like kind of a fantasy murder mystery, and House of Dragons is kind of the grounded fantasy story, with a lot of intrigue, which is probably good. If you're dealing with Sith, you're gonna have to deal with intrigue. Probably these are the genres that people are, experts in, and will probably be focusing on the show. Although, I just want to add, just because you're a write for a certain genre a lot doesn't mean you can't do anything else. Like you could do like the complete opposite if you're a versatile writer. Yeah. But just kind of reading the tea leaves, that's sort of the vibe I get. So cool. I'm excited. Yay.
I mean,
pedigree.
On that point, I mean, it's a great point. Russian Doll, The Acolyte seem to be two very different shows. At least on the surface. Probably under the surface, they're going to have some similar vibes, but Leslie Headland seems also very, very diverse. I have no least favorite House of the Dragon episode. I adored that show. It is my favorite show of 2020. Sorry to Andor. I loved every moment of that show. So that whatever she wrote on that, whatever she's doing on The Acolyte, Charmaine de Great, DeGrat, I'm looking forward to that. Okay, I mean, definitely looking forward to the show at all, but
oh yeah, of course,
great, nice little tidbit, nice little connection there that makes me even more confident this is going to be a fantastic piece of Star Wars story. Speaking of more Star Wars story, we got some book news that just dropped noon Eastern today. E.K. Johnston said she was going to do a multi-platform book announcement. It is a Star Wars. It isn't Sabe, but that's fine. That's great. It is Crimson Climb, and we got a cover for that. Let me pop that up there. That is a nice looking book. Nice looking cover.
Nice.
You got the Crimson Dawn logo, Crimson Climb. There's no real any details about it other than that it's set in October, or not set in October. It comes out in October. It may be set in October. We don't know of what year. October 10 BBY. I don't know if that's true.
Does October exist in Star Wars?
Probably not. Probably not. It does in Lord of the Rings, but not in Star Wars. So yeah. So yeah, looking forward to this. I mean, it's even a darker. E.K. Johnson on Instagram, I think, was saying she wrote, or maybe it was Twitter. She finally wrote a villain novel, even darker tone. The three Padme novels, definitely a lot lighter. Except for Good Queen's Hope was a little more complex, not necessarily darker, more complex. And then and then the Ahsoka novel, which was a ways back. And we've talked about that one till the cows come home. This one, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what she does with this character, because Kira is this complex, layered character. She's a villain, but you really cheer for her. You really cheer for her. Charles Soule's really gotten me cheering for her, and Charles Soule and company. Even in Solo, you wanted her to get her own in the end. So yeah, this is gonna be, see when this is set, what story, what part of chapter in the story this gets through. So Joel, what did you think of this announcement?
Yeah. I'm kind of curious when exactly this is set. I mean, everyone's kind of looking at those dice and like, is it this when she's still trading under
Sure, she
Dryden
got the dice.
Voss?
Yeah.
Is this after Solo? Is she gonna train under Maul? Is this sort of like an unofficial prequel to the Charles Soule thing?
Mhm.
To make another time, E.K. Johnson wrote an unofficial prequel to a Star Wars comic
Yeah.
thing.
How does it relate to Most Wanted? Which I
Yeah,
have yet to read, but
she mentioned Ray Carson in her tweet, so she's
yeah.
definitely aware of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is cool. Although I know some people are a little sad because this kind of puts another nail in the coffin of Kira probably showing up on screen. But
Mhm.
okay. But yeah, I'm excited. I'll read it. I'm interested to hear about Kira's past, and especially when is this the Dryden Voss era or the Maul era?
Right.
I feel like if we're Maul, we probably know because they love putting Maul and stuff. But who knows?
Watch there be Maul on the back cover again.
That'd be cool.
Just like in the Plagueis novel, right?
Yeah.
Have Maul on the back cover. Yeah. See, but I mean, E.K. Johnson, I mean, she's definitely I mean, all Star Wars authors have to know what everyone else is writing, but she definitely knows. She definitely is aware of. I mean, she's definitely read Ray Carson's novel. So yeah, it's gonna probably build on that a little bit. So I get to reading that one first. I got until October. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, and also again, looking forward to enjoying this cover for now. We got a cover there. All right. You got any more thoughts on the news, or are we good to move on?
No, I'm excited. I've been saying, I mean, I love the High Republic stuff too, but like, I'm more interested just kind of what the one-offs that
Yeah.
aren't part of the High Republic initiative is, because that's been dominating the book stuff so long. Like,
That's true.
what's for the other eras?
And we've gotten some pretty great ones the past year.
Oh yeah.
And the two Obi-Wan novels, and of course the three in the summer. So all right, let's get into it. Joel, lead us back, take us back to an era before the High Republic, before
The
something else.
time before time. That's bionicle. Yeah, let's go back to the wars of old in canon. Back when there were lots of Jedi and the Sith numbered in the thousands before they killed each other, and then there were just two. Yes, we are going to talk about the Jedi versus Sith conflict canon so far. Which is going to be interesting because there's not a lot of it compared to Legends, where if you look at my notes, half of the notes are just me listing all the conflicts.
Oh goodness.
Yes,
They
but
weren't
let's do a canon rundown first.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we know that thousands and thousands of years ago there was a schism where a rogue Jedi decided, you know what, the dark side's pretty cool. Let's tap into it, people. And the Jedi were like, nah, bro, we don't want to do that. We're cis, we're non-binary folk. We don't want to do that. We like the light side. We think it's cool. And thus, the first great schism broke out, which lasted to the 100-year darkness. But we don't know what much about the 100-Year Darkness in canon is. But that was also in Legends, and they decided to bring that name back. But after the 100-Year Darkness, the rogue Jedi got exiled. They kicked you out, and they fled to the planet Morabon, Korriban in antiquity, and formed the Sith Empire. And thus, the Jedi versus Sith conflict lasted for thousands and thousands of years. The Sith put a shrine on Coruscant, which then the Jedi put a temple above it. I just like that idea. Like, here's our shrine, and the Jedi like, plop. Here's
That's
our temple.
a very common practice in the real world, by the way.
I know, but I just like the idea of like this temple was already built, and they just like plopped it down on it, like crash. Cartoony. And great Sith lords emerge like Momin and Viceroy, Exim Penchard and Dark Noctis, who, according to legend, found the planet of Exegol to try and be immortal. That went terrible for her. Excuse me. Also, somewhere along this line, there were the Mandalorian Wars, where you had Jedi Tar Vizsla forging the Darksaber and uniting his people. We know that the Mandalorians had weapons and prisons for Force users. Then somewhere that Malachor incident happened that has nothing to do with Revan this time. It's just there was a
as far as
temple.
we know. As far as we know. That's what
who knows? Could have taken place. There was a Sith temple, with a super weapon, and by a Sith witch, and then everyone turned to stone in that battle. And then somewhere along the line, the Sith finally did it. They took Coruscant again. They ruled the galaxy, and they had peace until they started killing each other. One by one, until only Bane was left, and thus he passed his knowledge along to one and only one, and thus the rule of two was fermented. And then the Jedi took him down, or something happened, and then the Siths were gone, and then the old Republic collapsed, but a new Galactic Republic formed, and thus the galaxy kind of started again in Year Zero. And that, as far as we know, is the basic idea of what happened before the High Republic in the Old Republic. The Jedi and the Sith were a bunch of them, and they were all running around causing chaos. Oh yeah, and some along the line there was also like that other cult that we see in Afra and stuff like that. So,
the Ascendant and the Order of Spectu and all these other groups.
all that happened to you somewhere along the line. But that's the basic idea. So what can we gauge from what I just described? There were a lot of Jedi, there were a lot of Sith, and they just kept on fighting each other like cats and dogs, who aren't friends. And the Sith eventually got to rule the galaxy, but clearly they lost it because they couldn't help but just get greedy, which obviously always happens when there's a bunch of Sith lords.
Here's a question there. Do we know, is there any point there's the Sith actually, I guess if they got to Coruscant, they have this temple on Coruscant, do we know if they actually had a Sith Empire?
Lots of canon novels mentioned the Sith Empire.
All right.
So there is an entity called the Sith Empire. Aftermath mentions like there's this story about like a tiny fleet going against the Sith Armada.
Right.
We
it's
don't
been
know
a while since I read that, so fair enough.
but there have been an entity. There is an entity out there that people have called the Sith Empire. Then don't listen to the Wikipedia articles because they use too much of the RPG games, and the RPG games keep saying that the Great Hyperspace War happened, and I don't believe it because it's not in paper, it's not in a story. I'm sorry, I have a whole thing. I have a whole rant about this, like I won't get into. But we know there is a Sith Empire. It's kind of hard to tell what that looks like, and if that's similar to what it looked like in Legends, or is there just one Sith or not? And kind of it's interesting to think about, well, okay, so the idea is these wars were going on since 5,000 BBY. If the Sith Order formed around 7,000 to 6,000 like in Legends. And we're just going off what source books have been talking about. And timeline books have gone out for years. That's all we got. It's sort of like, well, okay, the Sith and Jedi keep fighting each other. How expansive was the Sith Empire? How expansive was the Old Republic at the time? it reminds me a little of the first age in Tolkien, where like there were various wars against Morgoth, but Morgoth was never fully defeated until the War of Wrath. So that's kind of my interpretation. It's like the Sith and Jedi just kind of were always in stalemate. Sometimes they were offensive, sometimes there were good times that the Sith were being held back, and then you finally got the war that happened in 2000 BBY with the final battle there where the Sith like really came together. They took the galaxy. They clearly fought each other. Darth Bane happened. It's a little unsure right now if Darth Bane was a public figure that the Jedi had to unite and take down. Like, if was Darth Bane a Sith Emperor as well? It's hard to gauge, because that's what that the comic Star Wars 100 mentioned. I should have gotten that line. I'll get that line out when we were talking. Maybe I'll find it.
Yeah.
And then obviously we get the High Republic. So really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's basically what you're getting. There's not much to go on just yet. The main thing, I think, the most concrete thing we have is Malachor. Something happened on Malachor. There was this great cataclysm. I mean, clearly there's a name drop there, and we'll get into what that is in Legends, Malachor 5. But clearly something that Yoda wants Ezra to learn from. And so in the context of the Jedi doing something really bad and taking this probably very desperate action that goes against who Yoda thinks the Jedi should be. That real, but also the thing to say is that's a big reset. That's a big moment of just like Order 66 is a big reset. Malachor seems to be this big, possibly because a lot of important Jedi die at that moment, and a lot of important Sith die, and the Sith Empire or something super important just collapses after that. We know that's around the same time as the fall of the Old Republic and the rise of the Galactic Republic, and like you're saying, this reset of Year Zero. My sense, at least, is that Malachor and Bane have something to do with that, and Bane being in response. Maybe I'm going off of Legends and the Rusan Reformations, but that seems to be pretty important. Another thing to point out, and I want to mention, and maybe this is for a conversation at the end. I'll bring this up again. I'll just say it now. Very curious to see what role Tar Vizsla has to do with this. What role? Because of Mandalorian lore, we've gotten a bit of that too, right? We've gotten a bit of that. There was this war between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, and like you said, they had these prisons, those boxes that they throw them all in. All the light whips and the magnetic technology that is very reminiscent of the Ascendant. Actually, Mandalorians also had that. I don't know if they took it from the Ascendant or developed it themselves, but Canon or Sabine, I think Canon says all this technology is meant to try and match what the Jedi are able to do. Similar, again, the way the Ascendant, their technology is meant to match what the Sith can do, literally using magnets. I'm not kidding, but some weird stuff about inhabiting consciousness and who knows what. So and what sparks that? What causes that? What is Tar Vizsla? What's his motivation? How much is he tapping into the dark side at this point, or not? Is there a matter of the Jedi being fallen to the dark side as well? In the way that they are at the end of the late Republic, and so Tar Vizsla, maybe I can see people trying to tell the story of Vizsla trying to purify them or reform them. I don't know. This is just me thinking right now. Probably not, but there's still something. Again, this brings me back to Malachor and why they are led to do something so terrible and cataclysmic. We'll see.
Oh, by the way, I found the quote. Okay, so this is Star Wars 100 by Charles Soule. Luke's talking the vision of Eldar Man.
So this is Charles Soule's 100th.
Yeah, Charles Soule's 100.
It's still it's Star Wars 25.
Oh, just Charles Soule's 100 comic. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I heard what Eldar says. There's a vision of Coruscant, the Jedi Temple. It's all looking nice. This is what it was like in my time. We were never alone. Sometimes we were all connected, like truly. I have a friend. She hears the Force's music, and it doesn't matter. She must be gone too. But this is what the Order was for me: a golden age, about 8 centuries after we ended the rule of Sith Lord Darth Bane. Then Luke's like, "Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Darth Bane. It's too much." Uh, so that's interesting. They talk about. Oh, there we go. Back.
Yeah.
Talk about the rule of Darth Bane. Like that's kind of interesting. That kind of makes it seem like Darth Bane was in charge of the galaxy for a bit before the Jedi took him down.
Yeah, that seems to be if Elzar ends up knowing about him. Now, in the
But
context
Yoda
of
does
that,
too. In
yeah,
that
it's true. Yoda definitely does. Uh, Two things. It's in the context of that, this is Elzar's sort of force spirit, quasi not quite force ghost thing going on, but encountering Luke on that planet. Also, little funny thing, yeah, Darth Bane, it's too much. I can hear Mark Hamill having a conversation. throw the Joker in there too. Mark Hamill voices Darth Bane, of course. Throw the Joker in there too. But yeah, that's okay. So yeah, we get a definite number there, about 1,000, because Elzar and Avar. He's talking about Avar there, of course, with the Force as a song. There, of course, around 230-ish BBY. So yeah, 1,000-ish BBY.
That's normally when it happens in
Yeah.
Legends too. So, and that was also George's thing of the Sith. There was the Sith ruled the galaxy 2,000 years ago, and
Right.
he also thought the Sith formed 2,000 years ago, and then Legends kind of pushed that back way back.
Yeah, that makes more sense. But it's interesting to say that 1,000-year mark.
1,000 BBY.
1,000 CE is also, I mean, not quite a turning point, but the Great Western Schism is 1035. The rise of the Ottoman Empire, not quite around the same time, but that still seems to be, there is this transition mark in terms of moving towards the High Middle Ages, moving towards them, the Renaissance and Enlightenment. But those are, of course, number of centuries off. But yeah, it's a bit of a neat, easy round number, but
1,000 years ago always sounds so ominous.
It's you know what it is. It's sufficiently long to be able to create new stories that don't really affect too many things, but it's close enough compared to other things we're seeing in Legends, which are way even further back. Close enough to be able to say, okay, we know this happened, because we know who was around in 1,000 CE. We know at least in the West, and probably the rest of the world. We know who the Archbishop of, we know who the Pope was around then. We know who, the leading scholars, leading thinkers of the day, and some different innovations. Of course, things would happen only a few centuries after that. But yeah, it's not as long ago as you think, and at least 10 exactly 10 centuries ago. It's not as long as ago, and so 2 centuries, as in kind of the High Middle Ages, would have been about 1,200, 1,300. That's what I was getting at. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
What's interesting about Star Wars, and this is another thing they've stuck with Legends, although who knows how much of this will change when some stuff actually starts developing, is they say the Jedi formed 25,000 BBY. That's a long time. And it's sort of like, it's interesting that the Sith are 6,000, 7,000 BBY more or less. They're still kind of the young organization in terms of evil mythical orders. I mean, the Jedi have been around that long.
I mean, 25,000 gets into kind of, I don't understand. That's too far. That's too.
They also say the Republic was formed around that time too.
Sure.
This is, as we check. Yep, the old Republic, the old Republic, the OG Republic.
Sure.
I guess in maybe some way, because I kind of see, maybe because it's my Tolkien brain, so I guess it's where me and Dave Filoni have a lot in common. I see the Jedi kind of like the elves. The elves have been around a lot longer than, say, the orcs.
True.
I mean, I guess Morgoth was around for a long time, but and there were some other schisms beforehand, before the Wars of Beleriand, and the elves went there to fight the Silmarils.
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess the next question to think about is there have been Jedi purges in the past, especially in Legends. Um, the great Jedi purge of Episode 3 was not the first time they've had to deal with
No.
this stuff, but it did seem, at least at the time, and it could still be the most severe Jedi purge they've had.
It's the total elimination of the Jedi Order as we know it. Right.
Yeah,
It really is
and
total.
but it's as total as you're gonna get with Jedi.
Yeah.
You're always gonna have some stranglers.
True.
But but in the Old Republic, it lasted for thousands and thousands of years, and you know, maybe, and I think we talked about this during Plagueis, but I think a lot of that maybe because the Sith being an active presence kind of always were there to remind the Jedi, hey, don't be like us. We're going to be active. The Sith are like, they're going full on over evil. It's like, we're going to build our weapons of doom and perform our evil rituals in public for all to see. And, that gives something to unite the peoples of the galaxy against. It's just kind of interesting at these ongoing wars and sieges and conflicts happening. The Sith are always actively present for the Jedi to be reminded, hey, there's this great force that we're still fighting. And
they're a foil to say, let's not be like them. Let's not be, but also to keep them on their toes. Let's not be arrogant. An actual threat. So,
and it's kind of interesting that the Jedi had armies during these times. I mean, they talked to even High Republic, I think, about hey, we had Jedi armies once when we fought the Sith. What were we supposed to do? Kind of interesting that the Jedi don't lose their way. I mean, some Jedi will lose their way, individuals will, but the Jedi as an order didn't lose their way during this long period of time when they were just constant wars against the Sith. And apparently even thousands of years beforehand, in the beginning times. Although, who knows how institutional the Jedi were 25,000 years ago. I think that's just kind of an interesting, another observation of just this prolonged time. I guess here's a question I'll ask you. We talk about the Jedi a lot, and what do you want the Sith to look like? Like, we've seen versions of the Sith Empire in Legends. Sometimes they're a little too much like the Galactic Empire, but just with more Dark Lords running around, for my taste. But, they've talked about Sith Empire. That term has been used in paper, at least. We got Exegol, which is the Sith throne world, in the hidden world of the Sith, which I actually like. And I guess we haven't talked a little bit. We can talk a little about Exegol. Because that seems like an important place, even more so than Morabond. If Morabond is like maybe they did a little bit of this in Legend 2, where like Morabond's the tomb homeworld, but the actual capital is a different planet. Maybe that's what happened. Like Morabond is where Morabond is where we founded the Sith, but now we've moved like our official dark side capital to. And now we have like the throne of the Sith. So clearly it must have been someone, every now and then someone super powerful would be in charge. But I guess what do you want to see the Sith look like, either as an empire, as a bunch of kingdoms with people who call themselves Sith, kind of a unified force that eventually will always turn on each other? Like what's your thoughts?
I mean, it's a difficult question in part. I mean, I'd like to go into look at what Legends might help us answer that question. But the interesting thing here is what do current Star Wars authors, creatives believe about good and evil, and that's what's going to guide the storytelling. Believe about institutions versus freedom, institutional order versus freedom. All these ideas that get played out in story, selfish motivations versus selfless motivations versus self-sacrifice being taken too far and self-immolation. So that interesting. Here's the thing is Legends portrayed the Sith as I was thinking of this in terms of watching some of the Old Republic stuff, like the Legends Old Republic stuff. It really portrays the Sith as kind of anarchic, primitive, low technology, I mean, the thing that was so brilliant with George is he portrayed George and James Luceno is the Sith we see in those stories. They're at the top. They're the wealthy. They're the ones pulling the strings uh of this capitalist uh regime, basically. The military industrial complex, things that
Mm-hmm.
trap systems and societies and people into effectively in a form of slavery and enslaving them into just this is the way you do things, this is the way you make money, this is the way you get by. I want to see that explored more explicitly in the Sith. I
Mm-hmm.
want the Sith to be the ones in the center and the Jedi to be the ones more out on the periphery. And that, I mean, that is a more compelling in our 20th century, 21st century, what century is it? Our 21st century worldview and the struggles and concerns we have. I think that's a more compelling story now to see that, because I mean, there's the easy, I think there's the kind of people might think this is the obvious one. There's some people who might want to see the Sith as these good guys who just wanted to be free and explore the Force. They like the path of the open hand a little bit, but not in the same way. Obviously, you want to explore the Force, make, build connections, and that the Jedi were this institutional force that stopped them, and so they were kicked out. Uh, I, that may be interesting as a smaller story. I think maybe as one thing that happens, but ultimately, I do want to see maybe something. I mean, maybe this will be a little too on the nose in terms of derived from Palpatine's rise, but yeah, I'd like to see them at the center. I mean, I think is it like that old Republic, the current old Republic MMORPG where it's a Sith Emperor who's incredibly powerful, or maybe it's like Knights of the Old Republic or something.
No, it's
I'm
still
not.
Republican book.
Yeah. Like I'm not fully up on that, but the thing that's still ongoing that is Legends, but still ongoing, the new
Yeah.
game. They're are they Sith? Is that what's going on there?
They are the true Sith Empire
Okay,
that
so
came
there's
from the
something Sithy going on. Okay,
Yeah,
you know,
I can explain later.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see something like that. See that explored. Um, just because a way of saying, what evil is, or evil are these
Mm-hmm.
systems that trap people into being less than themselves, and the Bible talks. Here we go. I can find the thing. Talks about the powers and principalities and demons and spiritual
Mm-hmm.
forces. The way I think about that is in terms of political systems and economic systems that keep people down. And um, that is the dark. That's what I mean by the Jedi of the late Republic had already fallen to the dark side. They aren't serving the light. They're not servants of the light at that point. Some people they're trying their best. I think Obi-Wan is trying his best. Yoda will recognize later he's failing. Mace Windu is Mace Windu. Qui-Gon is one of those paragons of the light. But by and large, yeah, they've given in too. So under the thrall of a Sith Lord. So that's kind of what I want to see more.
See, I have trouble with that just in terms of just the story of Star Wars,
Mm.
and the whole idea is that that's what the Sith become after their last big failure. I
Interesting.
mean, the
Like
Sith
the Bane
Empire.
rule, you mean?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
very much the Bane rule, that Baneite Sith,
Mm-hmm.
of which George himself was the creator of, and the
Sure.
Sith beforehand have always been just kind of whoever was in charge of writing it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's interesting, you talk about the Sith being anarchaic, and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of an interesting thing in Legends where you got the Tales of the Jedi-Sith, and that was written before the prequels, so kind of
Yeah.
very, very high fantasy. You see swords and spears. Um,
Right.
then you got Knights of the Old Republic, which came out like during the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones era. I guess we do the look back now.
Yeah.
Where they kind of they kind of just make the Sith the Empire, just with more like
Yeah.
dark siders
I don't
around.
want
And
that
I know I don't
specifically.
have one. I don't want that either. To be honest.
Yeah, it's too
Um,
derivative, but
Yeah, it's too derivative. And then the old Republic MMO, that's just pretty much the Empire. I'm gonna link you in our chat room the Sith Empire emblem from the
Oh
old
yeah,
Republic game. It is. They talk about,
it's on
just
the
let's
nose.
just
Yeah,
let's just do the prequels, but no, let's just do the prequels that are rich in Empire, but in the past, and maybe a little
yeah,
bit more armory.
hmm
Here, I'm gonna put it in the private chat.
yeah.
You know, um, I think maybe though one way you can kind of do it
Oh yeah.
is you have, maybe you kind of do in a weird way what the Mandalorian's doing, where you have the old Republic, you have the Republic in the center, but as you kind of go out into the periphery and you just have these lone Jedi walking around, they find these just planets ruled by Sith, and there's just these Sith kingdoms. I've always kind of
Yeah.
liked the idea there is no unified Sith empire. It's just Sith
hmm
lords who control various dominions, and they just treat their servants and people like a Sith, like that
Yeah.
Viceroy Exton Panchar who ruled his own kingdom and just tormented everyone. Um, and then maybe Jedi would come there like, hey, stop that, and then epic
But
fight where you kind of have to make it more. Because I think another that is just also you wanted to kind of have, it's probably a video game thing as well, where you just want the two factions,
yeah.
and here's the war. And I think if you want to do more just storytelling, you kind of maybe just do like,
hmm
I mean, you can have a grand war later, but just here are stories about our heroes coming into these areas that are dominated by Sith, and
hmm
maybe then they'll get Republic help later when they can get contact. Who knows what communications were like back then.
True.
Um, and then maybe like around the 2000 BBY era, then you kind of have the Great Sith Jedi conflict, the last big one where the Sith just like, okay, we're sick of these Republic people, are gonna come together. Maybe they're the big bad guy, like the Emperor, the Sith
hmm
Emperor at the time, for all we know, and they push into Coruscant. They
Sure.
finally, and then you can kind of even do even more so, where you kind of have your rebels and empire thing, because now they're in control, but the Sith are also kind of killing each other because that's what
Right.
Sith do. It's their
hmm
basic instinct at the end of the day. That's why Bane only wanted two, but not a bunch of them running around.
Sure.
And that you could have your heroes in your more rebel fashion, but maybe with more Jedi around.
Mm.
And then obviously
Yeah.
the big fall. It's hard to think. It's kind of, I mean, I know why they haven't done it yet, because I'm having trouble kind of thinking
Yeah.
like what's interesting, but also what's not Legends.
Right.
Not be
Well, I
derivative.
mean, we can do the legend look back in a second, but well, I like your idea of having different Sith planets having like
There's
they're
kingdoms.
like kingdoms claiming to be Sith and
Mhm.
claiming the lineage of true Sith, or tapping into some sort of dark side thing with somehow being able to form a society around that. Because what that does is allows for different relationships with the Jedi and Coruscant, different relationships with light side users, because that's the thing, is ultimately these are shadows of the light side. The dark is the shadow of the light. What
Mhm.
that would allow for, yeah, is my idea of a planet or a kingdom that is a lot more technological and very hyper capitalist and very market driven, one that's very technology driven. I mean, maybe even, I'm just thinking of this now, the origins of the Trade Federation and of the banking clan, and um, that they come out of these Sith empires and Sith kingdoms that had their own little expertise. I don't want to say a monoculture, maybe a monoculture would be fine,
Mhm.
but also some of them could be the actual Sith species, to bring that into canon.
Yeah, who
On a place
knows?
they like Corbin or Yavin 4, the Masasi on Yavin 4, or
Yeah.
wherever, different types of stories that would obviously, again, the whole origins of the banking clan and the Trade Federation and the
Uh,
Intergalactic Commerce Guild, that to to have those different kinds of stories, then ultimately they rise up. Because I mean, I'm going to go partisan, political, pretty crass. What it could be ultimately is a comment on libertarianism and the, like, a very right wing,
oh yeah.
you know, Southern U.S., Western Canada libertarianism, in which they rise up and say, "Don't make me get vaccines. or else I'm gonna go raise my swastikas and say F Trudeau.
Yeah.
We had that last few years. You know, that kind of thing that I wanna see explored through these kinds of stories, because there are, like, to have these little fiefdoms and ways of controlling uh parts of society, parts of
Mhm.
the galaxy, uh according to these different dark side aspects. Yeah.
I sort of, if I want to put in historical context,
Mhm.
I sort of see the Old Republic as like the Byzantine Empire, and then the Sith kingdoms are as the little whatever was all the little kings and warlords coming in ever since Rome fell.
Yeah,
Kind of like
that's
everyone just
interesting.
kind of doing their own little thing. That's how I see
That
it.
is
And then
interesting. I mean, I have a more positive spin on the post-Roman West, but yeah, it
hey,
can be possible too.
kind of just Byzantine's the well, it's like here's the Republic. That's probably still the biggest faction.
Yeah.
I would assume. I don't know. Um, there and then you got all these little cis domains and kingdoms just running around.
Hmm.
Some bigger than others. Maybe sometimes they're more unified with each other than other times.
Hmm.
Um, kind of in that Dark Ages, Crusader Ages kind of things. I think that's another way
Yeah.
to take as well, mixed with
Yeah,
maybe
because that's another kind of very institutionalized type of thing.
kind of because like
Yeah.
again, like when you see the oh, who were the? I keep forgetting the cult name in Afra who that control Afra right now.
The Ascendant.
The Ascendant, like they talk about the Sith, and you see a bunch of Sith, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, who are all these people? Who are they? Who are they?
Sure.
Who's their boss, or did they just decide to come one day? Is there a Sith council? I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
who organizes these things?
Does Afra
Um,
know? She probably doesn't care.
I mean, she probably doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they know either. I don't think they're ready to lay down the institutional
Yeah.
complexities of what the Sith Empire was. It just there was a Sith Empire. Maybe it's like even like the Holy Roman Empire, where it's like there's a Sith Emperor, but no one really listens to him,
Yeah.
kind of a
Maybe.
thing. It's even though
These
he controls the market.
electors and petty rivalries and things like that. So.
Then one of them becomes Darth Bane is technically Prussia. I mean, I um the Palpatine, so
Sure.
um.
Why not?
Uh, but I think you're right because I do think the Cis need to keep. I mean, I'll get politically crass. They need to keep that fascist
Mhm.
ideology behind it. Like
Yeah.
I've sent you like about Andor and Palpatine's. People are like, why isn't Palpatine's Cis Empire like creepy voodoo? I mean, it's a little bit like that at the end, but I think Palpatine's Cis Empire, his ideal Cis Empire, is just this industrialized, crank out the machine. Here's just
Yeah.
the same Star Destroyer every time, 1,000 times. Everyone's in their little cubicle going doop doop with their uniform. Like, no, that is the true evil of Palpatine and his Sith. Like
Mhm.
that. It's not like I mean, there's some dark ritualism, sure, but there's also
Yeah.
that's just the you must conform 1984ness. And I think you should have some of that, even if it is more of a medieval bloody King Joffrey tyrant like thing. It just,
Yeah. That
I mean,
works too.
I mean, that Viceroy dude was very King
Yeah.
Joffrey is when that flashback.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Exene Penchard. It's in
yeah, it's like,
Shadow of the Sith. So, um, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no. I guess we should do the Legends look back.
Yeah.
Legends look back again because let's face it, guys. Canon doesn't have a lot about this, and this is why I think I was struggling a little bit for conversation. There's just not much. I'm sorry, there's not. It's like we know the Tarkin novel mentions the 5,000 years of Sith Shrine, which is because of the Clone Wars arc that never got aired. Sith Empire has been mentioned a couple times here and there, like in Aftermath, and apparently, oh, here's one. Tim Zahn novel. The Chiss sided with the Sith in the wars.
Yeah.
That was also because they were also part of the Sith Empire in the Old Republic MMO, and Tim Zahn brought that in. We don't know when Momin was, but I think he's a pre-Rule of Two Sith.
He seems that way, yeah.
He also never had an apprentice, so if he died, then whoops, there goes the lineage.
Yeah.
Again, the Rule of Two is one of those weird things where I'm like, I'm shocked you lasted that long without an accident happening.
It's kind of a bad idea. I come to think of it.
What if you both die? Like, well, at least
the dark side will find a way. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's the story
Mhm.
of Tales of the Jedi,
Yeah.
which I guess we'll get back into because now we're back to the Legends look back.
So
So,
I just
oh,
want to say
go.
the reason we're doing this is, like I said at the top, uh, Legends does often serve to be a laboratory
Oh
for
yeah.
canon stories. I mean, Thrawn is the classic example of that. Of and by laboratory, I mean there is all this wonderful groundwork storytelling laid down already. Why not mine it for
Oh
what
yeah.
works in canon, what works in our time in 21st century storytelling? But this could help us tease out those themes again of what is good and evil.
Mhm.
How do we understand that? How do we experience that in our time? These stories definitely dove into that question in ways that are, I'd say, more profound than others. But yeah,
Oh
very,
yeah,
very good.
and I normally don't think we should apply this logic, but
No,
a lot of this stuff can still technically fit.
yeah,
I mean, it's probably a lot of details that probably don't match anymore, but there's a lot of these stuff can fit. And Revan got mentioned in Shadows of the Sith,
hmm
Sith Empire, so there's always they authors love to try and put little things that they can.
hmm
They can't put whole swaths of story, obviously. 'Cause they gotta say that for someone else, but they like to put little details. Okay, so like in canon, like I said before, same thing happens. Great Jedi-Sism, 100-year darkness. Um, the Dark Jedi they get kicked out of the Order, and they
hmm
find themselves on Korriban, and there they meet the Sith species, and thus they become the Dark Lords of the Sith.
right.
Because for some reason we thought Sith would be a species. It was the '90s. George didn't lay it all out yet. Um,
There's weird red skin and things coming out their faces. Yeah.
yeah, it gets really interesting, kind of the whole cis species, cis true cis thing. It's kind
Mhm.
of an interesting thing, but I guess the Sith are always trying to be like, I'm the true cis. No, I'm the true cis.
Yeah.
Um, I have the best lineage. Um, that's villains and bloodline people.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds kind of
so
fascist, actually.
I mean, that's the Sith for you. So the Dark Jedi that ruled and the Sith interbred and thus formed the Sith Empire. Until eventually some Republic scouts came along. They found the Sith. The Sith have kind of been in isolation for a while.
Mhm.
Their great leader, one of the great Sith Dark Lords, Marka Ragnos, just died, and there was a bit of an internal conflict for who was going to be in charge.
All right. Yeah.
The dude who wanted to essentially expand the Sith Empire, Naga Sadao, saw the Republic have a good opportunity. Like, hey, the Republic are attacking us. We got to do something, sis. We got to rally together. Rally under me. And
Mhm.
I'm not totally politically using this to expand our empire and make myself powerful. And obviously, then the Great Hyperspace War happened. The Jedi came, the Republic came, and they destroyed the Sith. Naga Sadao had to flee to Yavin, where he and his Masasi slaves built some of the temples that we will all know and love in New Hope. Um, and then retroactively, they decided to say, you know what, the Republic also decided just to wipe out the Sith species, wipe them all out. We want them gone. The Sith Empire, make sure it doesn't exist again. It doesn't. And
Mhm.
then around that was 5,000 BBY. Then around 3,000 BBY, I think, more or less. Now probably like 3,900 BBY. So late early 3000s.
Sure.
We get the whole Exar Kun becomes the Sith Lord because he and Ula Keldroma found some. This is from the Tale of the Jedi comic. Found some ancient amulets, and the Dark Lord, those spirits that were in those amulets, declared, "You two are. You got the dark side in you. You're powerful. Thus we, the spirits of the old, declare you the new Sith, and we are going to make sure that you continue our legacy. Are not technically related to us in the species way, but you know what? We don't care. We're gonna make you cis
Interesting.
because you got the guts, kids." Um, this was also because the whole cis thing was kind of no one quite knew about that. So these are just more like classical Jedi who turn into cis, like Anakin and the Emperor and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so then we have the Great Sith War between Exar Kun, Ulikal Drama against Nomi Sunrider, all that Tale of the Jedi stuff.
Mm.
That war ends with Ula Caldroma coming back to the light side, and he lives.
Right.
He doesn't have his force powers anymore at the end, but he lives. And Exar Kun becoming a force spirit trapped in the Yavin temple. And then the seeds are
Wonderful
planted.
stuff.
Yeah, Luke gets to destroy him later.
Yeah.
But so that leads the siege to the Mandalorian Wars. And here's something interesting. I think you might actually find it interesting, Matthew.
Yeah.
So with the Mandalorian Wars were happening, the Jedi were like, we don't want to deal with this. The council's like, no, we don't want to deal with this. This isn't our fight. But then Revan's like, but the Mandalorians, they're killing and pillaging and doing Mandalorian
And
things. We gotta
Revan's a
stop
knight
them.
at this point, right?
Yeah, he's full on knight. I think
Yeah.
either knight or a master, one of those two. And then he decided, you know what? Hey, well, you know what? Hey, Jedi, if you want to come with me, I'm gonna form my own army and we're gonna kick some Mandalorian butt. And a bunch of Jedi did. They were like, yeah, his apprentice Balak was like, yeah, all right, we'll do it. Well, we're gonna join you. The council is sitting on their butt doing nothing. So they attacked the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian. This is 100 years after the Exar Kun War, so there's a little bit more. There's less space in between, so it's a bit more recent. So that war happens, and then the big devastating battle of Malachor ends the war. The planet of Malachor 5 explodes, leaving a tear in the Force. The big thing, but Revan's like, something's not right. Something's not right here. So, Revan's already kind of very militant at this point. Like, kind of like Mace Windu militancy of like, something's not right. We got to do something very active. Yeah. So he goes into the unknown regions. Go with the unknown regions. And there he finds the true Sith Empire. Now, it's called the true Sith Empire because these Sith are the blood descendants of the red-skinned Sith species that fled from Korriban under the command of Vitiate, who was a survivor who managed to get some of the people from Korriban and bail, and thus, reestablish the Sith Empire secret in the unknown regions. Sound familiar?
Yes. A little bit. So both, here's interesting. I just want to say, both Revan and Malak going. So of course Vitiate, I've coming back in the unknown regions. That's familiar. Revan and Malak taking action. Here's a threat. Taking action. In a way, we know this ends up poorly for them, but in a way that is Leia with the Republic and forming the resistance. It's so I think it's Jyn Erso taken off with Rogue Squad or Rogue One. That sort of theme, that comes back. It's interesting how that in Legends got corrupted. They end up getting corrupted by that, as opposed to in canon they haven't. So there's that aspect too that's familiar.
So they found the Sith Emperor. I think that Revan and Malak are pretty much ready to go to the dark side at this point, because I always feel like they want to say like the Sith Emperor corrupted their minds and turned them dark. But I feel like now they were already ready. It's just the Sith Emperor were like, okay, final push. You two, I'm going to declare you Sith Lords. You are now my servants. Yeah. Now go back to the known galaxy and form a Sith Empire. Don't say it was me. We're still in hiding, so we don't want you. You do your own thing. Right. This actually is very first order, final order in a way.
That's true.
So Revan and Malak, the Jedi Civil. Then we get to the Jedi Civil War. This is all in the kind of the old Knights of the Old Republic story, the Revan saga, as we retroactively called it. Happens where a lot of Revan Jedi, the ones who followed Revan, they went to the dark side because hey, Revan did. We love Revan. Revan's awesome. They start forming their own Sith Empire, and of course, like usual, they start getting a little too big for their britches and like, hey, forget Vitiate. Let's really form our own Sith Empire with the Star Forge. Because this was all part of the Emperor's plan to invade the galaxy, but this obviously, Revan and Malak start having their own ideas. Malak, of course, betrays Revan, Rule of Two style. There's a lot of proto Rule of Two here before the Rule of Two was actually an actual thing. And then obviously we know Revan turns back to the light side, defeats Malak. It destroys the Star Forge, and yay, we think the Sith are defeated. But of course, Revan, he still remembers something happened. So I gotta go back to the unknown regions, and I gotta confront the Sith Emperor, because I think something bad is gonna happen. So he leaves a lot of his friends like Bastila and Karth. And KOTOR 2 is kind of just remnants of Revan's empire still around, and they really purge the Jedi down. and you as the player, as the exile, and some of your others, you stop them, and then you actually, those Jedi will actually reforge the Jedi Order, so they kind of have a bit of a purge, and then the new Jedi Order rises from that again, the newest incarnation, and it lasts for a couple 100 years. 100 years of peace, pretty going on, but what they don't know is that by the time the Sith Emperor is like, he's putting in his spies, his puppets, and then boom, the Great Galactic War. The true Sith Empire of old from Korriban. They come back, they invade, they conquer half the galaxy, they wreck Coruscant in that awesome trailer we all love. And with Darth Malgus and all that stuff. And then obviously, but the Jedi hold their own at first, and thus it's interesting, and this is where things gets really wacky, a little weird. The Jedi and the Republic and the Sith, they decide, you know what? We're gonna have a peace treaty. We know we can't do this, so we know it. Cold War. 2 superpowers, galaxy divided, split the middle, Sith Empire and the Republic. Then a bunch of stuff happens. The war comes back. You defeat Vitiate. The Valkorian thing with the Eternal Empire, it kind of goes off the rails really quick. This game in the story, because Vitiate kind of takes a new body and forms a new empire that's not even Sith. It's its own
Sounds
weird
kind
thing.
of familiar again a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird. It gets really weird. Because that game's still going, we don't have an ending, so we just kind of have to assume eventually that true Sith Empire eventually gets destroyed. And once again, we think, yay, the Sith are wiped out, we're good. And then we get a couple thousand years pass, and then we get to 2000 BBY, where the Force Great Schism, where once again a rogue Jedi thinks he's all great and should, start using the power of the dark side, Darth Ruin, and decide he's an Umbaran, by the way, and he forms a new Sith Empire under him. A Sith Order is back again. We thought we destroyed them, but we didn't.
They're making the galaxy great again.
Yeah. Something, one thing, a big thing I don't want to see Canon do is all this. We think the Sith are destroyed, yay, and now they're back. We think the Sith are destroyed, now they're back. I think it takes away from the whole, the Sith are back in Phantom Menace. Oh gosh, I thought we destroyed them for good.
Yeah.
I think it takes away from that. So just have the Sith just continue and just have like ebbs and flows of
That's
war.
a good point. Yeah.
But anyway, so this is the war that kind of was in Lucas's head. Because a lot of this is sort of like, how are we going to take what Lucas eventually had with, the Bane stuff and all the stuff we set up with Tales of the Jedi, and now we're kind of just fusing them together. It's like, okay, this is just an ongoing conflict. So this is kind of the Lucas-y war that he kind of had in his head of the Jedi and the Sith, where the Sith do kind of reduce the Republic to a rump state. They don't take Coruscant, though, but they kind of become a rump state. Then a couple thousand years of just warlordism among the Sith. The galaxy, like if you go outside the Republic, it's cruddy. It's ruled by Sith warlords and groups, and just not fun. Not fun. The Sith do reemerge again as the Brotherhood of Darkness under Lord Khan.
Yes.
Who wants to make all the Sith equal, even though not really.
There's a weird sort of quasi light side thing going on there.
It's not really. It's just Khan's just good at manipulating a bunch of people. Okay. Khan's where it's like, we're all equal, and I'm more equal than you.
Interesting. Okay.
Boss. But Bane doesn't like that, and he's sort of like, oh, you've lost your way. So he wipes out all the Sith in the final battle of Rusan. It's the army of darkness against the army of light, led by Lord Hoss of the Jedi. The Sith are thought to be destroyed, except for one, of course, Darth Bane, and then he finds Thana, and then the Rule of Two happens.
Yes.
So if you can tell by Legends, there's just a cycle of Sith Empire comes, Jedi destroy them, they think the Sith are gone, maybe you get a couple 100 years, 1,000 years at best of peace, and then the Sith come back.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps going. So what did you take from that in as my Legends look back?
Yeah.
What did you take out of that?
First of all, great job summarizing all that. That was a lot to put into a little bit. A few things. That point about how let's not do all the back and forth, because the problem is a lot of this is in video games, and video games do tend to want it to reinvent the wheel a little more, just to have something new and exciting to do, a new exciting story to tell. Some of these, my sense, was way more successful than others. Revan, to my mind, and KOTOR 1 and 2, among the most successful stories and characters in Legends
Oh,
overall.
you
You know,
should find a place with KOTOR 2,
yeah.
and because there's a lot of philosophical stuff with like Kreia and the
Hmm.
Force and the will of the Force that I would love to hear your thoughts on.
Yeah, it'd be good to dive into that. But also, yeah, I mean, he is a significant standout
Mhm.
there. Yeah, another thing to say, if George has, we talk about what canon and sources of canon, if this is in George's mind, this fourth great schism, this great war that Edmonton's Drew Carpation really fleshed
Well,
out in a little bit,
I,
at least
I
for
want to,
the
I
end
want
of
to.
the book.
So I want actually no.
Oh, he didn't. Okay.
So what really so it's not a fourth grade system. George literally thought the Sith were formed 2,000 years ago, before the
Okay.
Phantom Menace,
Sure.
and that the Rogue Jedi and the Sith conquered, and then they destroyed each other, and
Mhm.
then Darth Bane. It's only the Fourth Schism because it was the Legends continuity that we had at the time with Tale of
Sure.
the
Yeah.
Jedi saying the Sith formed 5,000 years ago, trying to
Hmm.
reconcile what George was setting up with the
Yeah.
Phantom Menace novelization, and Drew Carpation kind of split the difference. It's like, okay, well, this is actually
Sure.
the fourth time now we've done this with all this, and we're going to connect it to the
Hmm.
Sith Wars of the past,
Yeah.
and this is kind of the more of the Sith War that leads into the saga we know.
Yeah. So what I mean, I don't necessarily mean like specific what numbers about
Mhm.
years or whatever. I mean, what I mean is the story itself. And
Right.
um yeah, I mean, I would like to see, I mean, the Brotherhood of Darkness, again, that concept is interesting. Um and then there's got to be something that Bane is reacting against by destroying all the Sith and forming the rule of two. And so that one seems the closest to any kind of anything we can say about is canon, sort of, again, because George brought it in through Clone Wars, and there's still this everything we talked
Right.
about at the beginning. So yeah, I mean that I gather that's going to be, just speculating, going to be where they go first. And we have Malachor, and Malachor is around there, the canon version of Malachor. I mean, I do think the canon version of Malachor can be like the Legend version of Malachor. Like I was saying before, but this desperate confrontation and cataclysm that happens, that does, you both, it tear this tear in the force. I don't know if they're going to go that far, but like the Clone Wars, it is a tear in the soul of the Jedi,
Mhm.
of who they are and what they are about, and it goes against that. I talk about, yeah, Exar Kunil, Kildroma, Revan, and Malak. It really strikes me, the point you make about how
Mhm.
the temptation of evil, and how
Mhm.
easily they
Oh
follow
yeah.
the dark side. Just or it seems how quickly and how easily, um, and it isn't long, it isn't quick.
Mhm.
It's working itself out over a number of years, same as Anakin, right? Or it looks quick in the moment in Revenge of the Sith, but working itself out over a number of years.
It's
But once you develop the desire for power, and that's another big theme that these all explore, that the canon versions still have to explore: power versus freedom, power versus power, the corruptibility of power, as opposed to the usability of power for greater good, and ends not justifying means, but means corresponding to ends. And
Right.
the way you, like, exactly what Ezra keeps going on, the way you fight, why,
It.
how you fight, and so yes. So yeah, I guess the last thing there I wanted to say then is to see that get explored there. And again, this is this interesting question of, uh okay, Revan, so Revan, apparently he's remembered as this great hero. Is he remembered as this great hero for disobeying the Jedi Council and taking on the Sith Empire? And you know maybe not. Leia is, of course, recognized as a hero for taking on the First Order, but that's a bit of a smaller scale conflict. She's less, of course, less tempted by the dark side. Maybe that's a part of it too, and a different era as well. But I'll be curious. I mean, again, and I'm curious to see where Tar Vizsla fits into that, because this is my big fan theory, is that Tar Vizsla is the canon version of Revan. But that's something I can get into in a minute. But you have a thought? Go for it.
That would be fascinating. I mean,
That's my theory. But anyway.
No one quite knows what Revan is. So, what's interesting, you mentioned Exar Kun, Ula Keldrum, and Revan.
And Malik.
To go back, Tales of the Jedi, and Malik. So what's interesting is Malik and Exar Kun are very much more, they just like power. It's like, it's the power. Ulick, funny enough, and this is because it was written by Tom Veitch, who wrote Dark Empire, so he's just kind of spinning his wheels a little bit with the plot. Ulick's whole thing is, he wanted to destroy the dark side and thought he could by infiltrating it. Like, he thought, if I can infiltrate it, then I can destroy it from within. And Luke Skywalker tried that too in Dark Empire, and
so does Quinlan Voss in
that's true.
What's it called? The Clone Wars arc turned into a novel.
Oh yeah, Dark Disciples, and also the comics too. So and didn't go so well for Ulick because he went full Sith Lord, and
or Quinlan Voss.
And Luke too, but Luke went to the dark side, and took Leia to pull him out. And it's kind of interesting, just kind of that. And Revan, there's a lot of conflicting things about Revan. Revan's not really much of a character so much as he's your character that you get to make and you get to play as him. You are Revan. You are the person or Revan. But
it's a self-insert in the video game sense, I guess.
Make him a little too important for his Bridgerton books and stuff. Like, it's Revan, he's awesome, he can do no wrong. But Revan, at least in some of the backstory, it's also kind of that militant, I can fight this, I have to dive into the darkness to fight it, and loses himself along the way as well. I just think that's kind of interesting, kind of the two types of evil. It's like you get the more kind of utilitarian, is that the right word? Kind of, I gotta fight this and dive into it and understand it to destroy it, but I'm gonna lose myself to it. And you got Exar Kun, and it's just like, I'm just an egotistical jerk. It's like, ooh, I like this power. I deserve it because I'm the best thing ever.
That's a good question.
Kind of more of a Palpatine-ish kind of.
I mean, one's kind of the intentional, conscious of self-interest and selfishness, and the other is the road to hell, the road to Malachor. There it is, guys. I've got it.
Yay!
The road to Malachor is paved with good intentions, guys.
Kind of like Anakin in some way too.
Yeah,
like, that's
for sure.
Very much. But and we talk about what they should do with this era in canon, be it on screen, in paper, somewhere. I mean, I want to see a big Sith versus Jedi battle. We all want to, I think we all deep down want to.
I'm just gonna leave that. Yeah. I'm so proud.
No, I think it's good. At Malachor is kind. Malachor, you could have said Exegol too. Malachor and Exegol are kind of the Star Wars equivalent.
But I also mean the actual the Cataclysm.
Yeah. We don't know when that is, so we don't know which Sith War it could have been. It could have been one of the earlier ones or the 1,000-year ones. Because I feel like the whole Old Republic era is kind of like in two epochs, kind of like the post-Endor era. You got the Mandoverse and we got the sequel trilogy. I feel like with the Old Republic era, we have two kind of epochs of time. I love that word, epoch. We have the war that eventually leads to Darth Bane, which is, I think, the one they'll choose to show us first, because that is the one that's tied to the Skywalker saga. I mean, that's kind of the background of the Skywalker saga.
It's the one that's came from George's mind, effectively.
Yeah, that one too. And then you kind of have Epoch 2, which starts with Tales of the Jedi, which is 5,000 years before the Phantom Menace. Which kind of then
isn't it even further back? I thought it was like, I guess 5,000. Yeah, and then like 33,000.
Yeah, 3,000, 5,000 BBY. Well, the tail. Okay, so Golden Age of the Sith is like 4,000, and then a couple thousand years for the first Sith Empire to make it seem mystical and old.
It's the Old Testament.
Yeah. It sounds kind of like, kind of in some way, yeah.
It's kind of the way I describe it.
Kind of, which I think you quoted now is kind of the Revan saga, because when you put in KOTOR 1, KOTOR 2, and Old Republic, it's kind of Revan is kind of the big cheese. It's its own saga essentially at this point. It's like, how can you say it really had anything to do with the Skywalkers outside of it's the same galaxy, and there's some stuff that probably leads to stuff.
Which I think Tar Vizsla, that'll be tied into more anyway.
Yeah, that stuff too. Although we don't even know when Tar Vizsla happened. I don't know. I'm kind of not sure how timelines are going to work in canon. But I do think that if I were kind of in charge, I would want to go for first the Bane's War that kind of led to
Mhm.
that because it's the most tied into our saga, the saga the most people know. That's what leads
Mhm.
to the Rule of Two and Sidious and Vader and
Yeah.
Exegol and all that stuff. So that's kind of the one I want to see. But I'm also here's my hardest of hot takes. There's part of me that kind of feels like a lot of this stuff should just always be a mystery. There's a part of me that feels like it's
Mm.
maybe just too epic, too epic. It's too awesome. It's too awesome for your eyes. But it's
Too
like
awesome. It's true.
too
Yeah.
awesome. But
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to put it like I was struggling just kind of talk about what we know in canon, and there's already so many little contradictory things that make it
Yeah.
confusing. It's like like even Tolkien, he kind of just gave you the basics on what the wars of the First Age were like. He didn't go.
Mhm.
I mean, there were certain tales like Luthien and Baron and Luthien, and maybe you can like
Yeah.
say like here's a movie set 5,000 years in the past. And there's this one story against
Mhm.
the Sith. This is the Sith villain at the time.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not like we're telling this epic saga of from Tales of the Jedi to Old Republic in the kind of what I showed you with those timeline
Yeah.
stuff, where it's kind of this one big story. I mean, it can still be this one big story, but in some ways, it's like the reason it ended up the way it did was because people just really like telling Sith Jedi Wars, but they always kind of had to end it in a too big of an epic way. Where it's like, and now the Sith are gone, yay! The Sith Empire is destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh wait, now they're back
Right.
because
they
eventually,
they shot themselves in the foot a little bit with
well,
that.
a little bit. They didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
It started in 1990. No one knew. No one
That's true.
quite knew what to do, what it was all
Yeah.
about. They
I
just
mean,
got little notes from George about the Rule of Two and stuff
right.
like that, and
Yeah, I mean that is the tricky thing is, people, they're not Lucasfilm, Disney, Del Rey, whatever. They're not going to release a book that says the Great Tome of the Old Republic or whatever.
right.
The creatives don't work that way. I mean, authors and creatives don't think that way. They
We
think
get little hints,
we'll
sure.
get hints. People aren't going to set out to tell a definitive story of this, and that's not how Legends worked either, as you mentioned, right?
Right.
Drew Carpation again maybe came the closest to that because Revan was so significant, but and of course because Bane was so significant to both. That's another interesting thing. And so yeah, I'd love him to come back, but it has to serve the story that is being told, and story plot is character development. And so that's the tricky thing is, none of this is going to come, like I said, none is going to come in one fell swoop. It's going to be, here's a filmmaker, here's an author, I have this great idea for an interesting character that I want to
Yeah.
explore, and I'm going to make all this world building around it.
Mm-hmm.
um like with the Phantom Menace, Bane is just this backstory that
It's in the
George
book.
developed.
It's not even in the movie.
well the thing, but it wasn't even that. It was something that, a few notes that George scribbled on a napkin, probably. And it was all,
True.
yeah, this is yeah, or on the top of it, yeah, this is what happened. This is Darth Bane. He found the Rule of Two. He destroyed all the Sith. This is my George
Yeah.
impression. I've
Yeah.
never done this.
I'm pretty good. I
Thank
like
you.
it.
Just okay. I'm not even gonna try that. But, yeah, destroyed the Sith, found the Rule of Two, and they went to hiding, and now they're back. You know, that, and then Drew Carpation is all, oh, that's really cool. That's a really interesting thing to explore. I'm going to explore that in a
And
novel
also, he
trilogy.
also said, "How do I incorporate that into everything that's come before with these
Yes.
Old Republic games and Tales of the Jedi?"
Yeah.
So,
Maybe in a similar focus vein, what we were saying last week. George has this tragedy of Death Plagues the Wise, and everything, of course, in the Phantom Menace, the political machinations there. James Lucino says, hey, I'm going to spin this into a novel and tie everything together that way. Yeah, so that seems likely what's going to happen. It seems likely, yes, that they'll talk about Bane. I honestly do think, again, I'm going to bring this up again. I think the most we're going to hear about is Tar Vizsla and Mandalorian lore. And the reason I think that is, again, on March 1st, 2023, there's going to be a show called The Mandalorian Season 3, and it is going to involve, uh, heavily involve character named Bo-Katan Kryze, who was part of Death Watch, remember? Din Djarin was part of Children of the Watch. The armorer who knows about the dark saber. Interesting little side note. The armor I was looking up. The armor said the dark saber is about 1,000 years old by Tar Vizsla. We have that beautiful animation in Rebels with what's his name? Canon and not Canon, Gar Saxon. You know what I'm talking about?
I forgot his name.
Yeah.
I forgot his name, and I don't want
He's
to remember.
yeah. One of the good guy Mandos. And if there is a toolbox, if there is a sandbox of ancient lore that Jon Favreau is more willing to play in, to work in, to explore and incorporate in the story he's telling at the moment about the descendants of Clan Vizsla and Clan Ren and Clan Kryze, it will be this ancient Mandalorian lore. And so I think we're going to actually hear more. Maybe not necessarily in Mandalorian season 3, but we might get some tidbits, because again, we're also going to Mandalore and we're going to explore what the city really was, what Sundari was really going on about, and even ancient Mandalorian beliefs. Like, where did this whole thing with the Children of the Watch believing the planet is cursed? Well, it had to have been there's something about that. I think it might have to do with the dark side. I think it might have to do with Tar Vizsla. I mean, we know he's a Jedi who up and leaves the Order and becomes Mandalore. That, at least that much is familiar. I don't know how much any kind of ancient Sith Empire has anything to do with it.
I did learn one thing right now. That story, at least, I actually have the quote here. Well, this was from the armor, so she said it was forged 1,000 years ago. So she didn't say 5,000; she just said 1,000. So it's all in that kind of 1,000 year.
I mean, they might tell him this could be Taika Waititi's thing. This could be something else. So they could be, but the two things could be related, like the Vizsla and the Bane thing. Even though, and so I mean, what I'm saying is, yes, I know Revan is 3,000 years. Fine, in Legends, fine. Canon, it would be. I don't know. I hope people won't get too upset if he at some point takes the name Darth Revan. Because here's the other thing. There is, why does he leave the Order? Is it just to be to see honor, to defend his people? We know we have another story of a master up and leaving the Order to take a position of leadership on his own planet. It's called Sereno. He ends up becoming a Dark Lord of the Sith, and ends up being, yes, his impetus is to root out corruption originally, but that Dooku ends up corrupting him. I'm wondering, what's his motivation? What's going on there? Why leave? The Mandalorians, their ancient ways are incredibly violent and militaristic. And maybe picking up what you're getting at with the Jedi being able to be more militaristic, but Revan and Malak thinking, okay, and Kildroma, Revan and Kildroma especially, we're going to go take on the Sith, and then they end up being corrupted by the Sith. That is a pattern, also a theme in Star Wars. I mean, that's a theme in High Republic. Avar Kriss, she goes to places that she shouldn't be going to, like morally, and Quinlan Voss, a similar story. So that would be, but that's the thing. That's an interesting character story that they've introduced little tidbits of. I think that's going to be a major. I mean, I'd love to see a Tar Vizsla novel, but if we get a Tar Vizsla film, it's introduced in screen.
I feel like it would be only because I feel like that's something that Favreau and Filoni might keep in their pocket. I mean, that's just my
Yep.
guess. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? Gotta see
That
what
makes
season three
sense. That
brings.
makes sense.
Gotta see what season three brings.
Yeah.
I'm curious. There's a part of me that kind of doesn't want Tar Vizsla to be evil. Like, I feel like they're trying to not soften the
Hmm.
Mandalorian, but like if they're violent, they're like Klingons at their best. It's
Yeah.
like you still want a Klingon on your side. I mean, I do. I want
Sure.
Worf. I
Yeah.
want Cancel Jalrond at my side anytime. Kind
I
of
mean,
like that
Sabine.
noble
Sure.
Sabine too.
Well, I was saying is Sabine seems to see him as a hero. She was House of Ren in Clan Vizsla. I mean, and I should mention, if John Favreau wants to mention it, he could voice the character. He could play Har Vizsla.
I
He's
mean,
played two other Vizslas, so you know,
yeah.
including
I mean,
one in The Mandalorian season 2, 1 and 2.
yeah. And, Mandalorian. They're trying to show. Mandalorians aren't automatically bad guys.
No.
They helped out Din. They look like they're gonna help out Din again. I hope. This season.
See,
So
I know. I think Bo-Katan's going to be a little more villainous.
yeah, probably. I think she wants that throne, man. She wants the
Yeah,
throne. She wants the throne.
that's cool.
But I would be curious, kind of, to see, because like in at least in the game world, in the legends, Mandalorians always sided with the Sith against the Jedi.
Mhm,
Back even during Exar Kun's war, because he had Mandalorian allies. During the Great Galactic War, because
mhm.
the Sith manipulated the Mandalorian leadership. They actually installed a puppet Mandalore to be their Sith
Right.
puppet. Um, so there's that. It'd be interesting if they kind of break the mold. It's like, no, maybe the Mandalorians were gonna actually. They don't like the Sith as much as they don't like the Jedi either. I don't. I mean, some of them
No,
don't. I mean, look at the ones that didn't like Darth Maul. So there's
sure.
that. And obviously they don't like the Empire. No one likes the Empire. Well, some of them did, but others didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
Gar Saxon.
so Garth Saxon didn't
I
like
love the Empire.
yeah, the Saxon, so you're gonna have some houses
Mhm.
um didn't like them either. So there's that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to still find who the heck told the story of the Dark Saber in that Rebels episode, and it's
It,
gonna
it was.
bother
Oh
me.
yeah. If in comments, remind us who was that guy who's narrating the story of the Dark Saber for Canon. Um,
I know
good,
it's like what's going
good
on.
guy, Mando Rebels.
Hang on.
No,
Fenrau.
yeah,
Fenrau.
that guy. Fenrir, that guy. Okay,
Fenrau. There we
we've
go.
solved the problem. There it is.
Yay.
I'm still really happy with this. I'm gonna see something. I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep going with
But
that.
it's like they said this happened 1,000 years ago. I guess I'm kind of just thinking about like timelines right now. Like this is
Mhm,
like okay, so we can like they keep saying the Jedi reformed 25,000 years ago. There's
mhm.
5,000, and then a bunch of stuff happened in that that cliche 1,000 years ago.
Mhm.
So it's like
Well,
when did
it's a
Han Solo?
thousand generations, which is well more than 1,000. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
25. I always say a generation 25 years, so 1,000 times 25.
yeah, there.
Makes
Okay,
out.
that's where the number comes from. Yeah,
I mean, I think in George's head, he really was just going for 1,000 years.
yeah,
Um, but I think Legends just kind of like, oh, we're just gonna make it longer. Why I don't
sure.
know. But yeah, regardless, like I'm kind of thinking like the timeline. Okay, like when did the Tar Vizsla thing happen? When did this final Sith war, where the Sith conquered everything, happen?
Mhm,
Did the Sith just kill each other by happenstance? Because
mhm,
that's what Sith do. And then Darth Bane was the last one standing, so he kind of picked up the pieces.
mhm.
What did the Jedi know of Darth Bane? And then how do we get the High Republic? That's kind
Yeah,
of where all my brain is. And then do you want to go? And maybe they'll go further backward when they don't really want to tie it in with the
yeah,
movies or the saga, the Skywalker saga, because that's kind of
sure,
the Revanite saga thing of like the Revan
sure.
saga. I'm gonna call it now because I like it.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
we don't have to deal with connections. I mean, we're gonna build our own continuity and we
yeah,
have to deal with that later. But if we
mhm,
set it 5,000 years in the past,
yeah,
we're not gonna have to worry too much about connecting to Phantom Menace or even whatever movies in earliest in the timeline. So it's like we
mhm,
could just kind of do our own thing and build our own little mini universe, and source books can
yeah.
figure out the rest.
I mean, if they want, there are all these Jedi temples that they keep discovering. I'm reading Quest for the Hidden City now. I'm trying to finish it. They just came across another one. You know,
Mhm.
there's the temple on Lothal. There is, of course, everything to do with the Zepho and
Mhm.
their temples and their precursors of the Force. And the thing on Tython, there are these markers, these things that they can pick up on and
Malachor.
flesh out that again don't have to have anything to do with anything, like you're saying,
Mhm.
but are still at least places to start, places to build off. They might not do that true Star Wars fashion. They may just make something up and new entirely.
Mm. I
But
mean, that's sort of the thing you do. Do you want to tell an ongoing series that kind of is about the lead up to what we know of Rule of Two? Or do you just
yeah,
want to do like anthologies? Like, here's one movie set 5,000 years.
yeah.
Here's a Jedi-Sith War going on. I
Call it
don't know.
Tales of the Jedi. Make it a comic book series.
Sure, I mean, who
Just
knows?
kidding.
Who knows what
I'm kidding, man.
what they'll do.
Yeah, again, I think they're definitely going to do both.
I hope they touch it. I hope this
Yeah,
era gets touched
but they're
eventually.
definitely. I mean, Bane and Tarvisla
Oh, yeah.
and Malachor, and that's all around the same time, and that's
Cross fingers,
why
Acolyte gives us cool things to.
that would be great too. I mean,
Mhm.
it's only 900 years back. It's not a whole 1,000 years back. It's 900. It's less. I
No, it's
mean,
even less if it's Phantom Menace. Remember, it's
true.
like 100
Yeah,
years
well,
before
the
Phantom.
30 or whatever. I kind of fudge that 30 year when I'm talking about stuff
Oh,
in the
okay,
past.
yeah.
But what was it? Even in High Republic, there have been Sith Lords mentioned, ancient
Mhm.
Sith Lords. That's the thing. This is what I thought is there actually are a lot of old Republic things mentioned in High Republic
Oh, yeah.
as a way, I think, of seeing. Well, no, they're not doing that. Again, they're setting up just to tell the story that they're telling at the moment in time. But
And they're fans of the
uh,
stuff of the Old Republic games,
yeah,
probably.
but I mean, what does this matter for
Mhm.
Solandra and Rupert to find an ancient Jedi temple in Gloam? What
Right.
does that matter for those characters in the moment?
Mm.
So they're doing that, but this is the thing Star Wars does. It's you can say, okay, let's actually go back and tell the story,
Mhm.
tell the story of what's going on Tython with that stone,
Mhm.
even if it has nothing to do with Grogu at all, Luke at
Right.
all, except to say the thing that's been laid out is that you can use it to communicate over vast distances if you want.
Mhm.
But there could be a lot more going on there. So like Ilum, like Lothal, like Coruscant itself. So
You know, honestly, I feel like the Old Republic is ripe for a High Republic like thing, but almost to the max. And what I mean by that,
mhm.
like, I've talked about this before. If High Republic is only three phases,
Mhm.
which we think we is, the High Republic era is like supposed to be what 1,000 years long in total. Like when does it
No, probably
start?
a
When
lot less. Probably a couple hundred.
Okay, a couple hundred. But we're getting phase two is like what 400 BBY,
380. Yeah.
380 BBY, and then phase one is what
Is
230.
230.
I don't see phase three doing a big time jump because we gotta know what
Yeah.
happened. Um,
Mhm.
that still leaves a lot of years, and
Yeah.
also just in general, a couple of years of backwards too.
Sure. And the
So
accolade should be about 130, right?
yeah, it was 130. So there's a
Mhm.
lot, and in the in between phases two and one, there's still
Yeah.
stuff that happens there.
True.
So that's where I feel like that's where screen stuff can go and not step on people's toes, hopefully,
Yeah,
but
it's
still
true.
keep the aesthetic of the era. I feel like the Old Republic could have that too, where it's like, okay, maybe you save like a movie trilogy for the big thing that connects to the Skywalker saga with the Rule of Two. Then
Yep.
maybe a book initiative that covers, I don't know, 3,291 BBY to 3,800 BBY
Yeah.
with this crisis.
Mhm.
The Jedi did tell the comic book series that's even further back.
Sure.
Maybe some video games and a couple series, kind of just all splattered around. Um, gonna kind of I maybe just kind of like section it off, so
Mhm.
kind of each era kind of has its own little individual piece. Just like here's a few rules: don't kill off the Sith right away. So then we do the whole, keep the Sith
Yeah.
around, but like this crisis is over. That sort of thing. That's
Yeah.
maybe what you could do because it's such a big era, really.
Well, it's
It's
multiple eras, plural.
that's it.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
yeah,
25,000 years.
I mean, and I like that. I mean, especially since High Republic, I found it. A lot of us find it so successful in what it's doing in this interconnected story. It's not for everyone. I get that, but in this interconnected story of a significant era that is very clearly connected to the Skywalker saga, how we get from
Mhm.
point A to point B. Um, that's another thing that all these things would have to do, right? If there is this big film trilogy, it would almost be like tie-in novels, then, like a tie-in initiative set a few centuries before that, right? Or a millennium before that.
Actually, not really. I was
Not at
sort of
all.
thinking.
Well,
I
but
mean,
my point being there is it would still have to, because one of the things that's making High Republic so successful is that it is doing its own thing, telling its own stories. You can do what you want with these characters, but it's the overall thing is how does it get to point A, point B of the Jedi being so entrenched on Coruscant in the affairs of the Republic.
well, I was kind of thinking the opposite of making it less interconnected, and that's why, like,
Yeah.
that's what the gaps are for. Like,
Like the
like the
longer gaps. Yeah.
yeah, like even the longer gaps in the High Republic era. I feel like if you don't want to screw up the timeline or screw up something, and then we have a
Yeah.
whole internet
I mean, there's
shebang,
there's an
like
aspect for it. True.
here's just another. In the High Republic because that's what the timeline is
Yeah.
called. But here's a conflict against the Xyle, the evil cousins of the,
Sure. I know what you
maybe not
mean. Yeah.
that, or like this is just a series, or we're doing a Deep Space Nine thing, where it's like it's all just about this one planet, kind of a
Yeah.
situation, or kind of it could be in the era, it can have the aesthetic, gold robes.
Mhm.
But in terms of the story of the Nile versus the Jedi and Markion, it's got nothing to do with that because we don't want to worry about stepping on people's toes.
True.
And it's just the era and a story
Yeah.
with character. Especially if we're doing a
I
TV
see what you
series.
mean, and that's again one of the strengths of the High Republic too. It's just that there's also this underlying energy impetus that is connected. And so in terms of the appeal of it, in terms of what will get it to sell, I do think there needs to be at least some sense of this is leading to that, if not obliquely or implicitly. Um,
Well,
yeah, I
I
mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a huge appeal for something completely different that completely plays, just builds a whole other sandbox next to it. Um,
we got off like
mm,
us. I mean, that's
yeah.
kind of the thing about the old Republic MMO, which
Mhm.
while admirable, where it kind of tried to take Tales of the Jedi and the
Mhm.
two old Republic games, and then retroactively say it's actually this grand story with Emperor Vishit as the big puppet master
Yeah,
behind it all. And like, I feel like maybe we should just like see different chunks of this 5,000 year
yeah,
timeline. Like, this can be TV, this can be books, this can be
right.
movies, and only tangentially have them connect in that it's the same
Yeah,
universe and
it
history
can
has to
even be
progress.
tangential. Yeah,
But
yeah,
don't do the whole. It was secretly the Grand Puppet Master a
yeah.
whole
No,
time.
that was silly. Yeah, yeah.
It works for the post Endor era because it's only 30 years and it's Palpatine.
Mhm.
But 30 years I can buy. A
Yes,
1,000 years of this one Sith Emperor who just keeps on living for too long.
yeah.
I mean, I'm having my suspension of disbelief
That's
here.
very much.
Super
I mean,
Palpatine.
Warhammer, which is cool, but I watched a
Yeah.
whole YouTube thing about the history of Warhammer, the in-universe history. It's
Mhm.
cool, but it's very much a setup for board game RPG type thing,
Yeah.
not uh, a literary film franchise. So yeah,
Yeah. So that's kind of where I mean I can buy Elite High Republic. At least it's a couple 100 years.
yeah.
It's not that long for
Oh,
like
true.
things
Yeah.
about the mother to like that
Here,
influence the Nile and stuff like that. But
here's what I mean is,
Mhm,
um, like the old Republic stuff doesn't
mhm.
have to connect to the Skywalker saga. Doesn't have to have
Right.
much to do with it.
Except for
What
maybe the
I
Bane
mean,
stuff.
yeah, except for the Bane stuff, right?
Mhm,
That's why you start with the Bane and Vizsla
mhm.
stuff, Vizsla
Right.
stories. Have a film, have a big, huge
Mhm.
thing that is the after, starts with the after picture, just like the Phantom Menace starts with that after picture.
Yeah.
Then have a a nicely disconnected a few centuries back follow the model that High Republic is following of okay, we're going to tell these stories, the specifics, these specific characters or whatnot. Even the planets involved don't have to be connected to that big Bane Vizsla story. I do want tie-in novels for those
Oh yeah.
things
Oh
specifically,
yeah.
but coming to something else.
Mhm.
But still, let's show us the before story that
Mhm.
leads to the after story that begins. Sorry. That I think that if I can see that formula, that pattern, that is the most interesting thing in the High Republic for me. Um, I
I
think that it is for a lot of people. So I would like to see something about that
I
happen.
I agree. It's sort of funny how I think for you and me might have. I mean, I don't know how you feel about the post Rise of Skywalker thing, but
Mhm.
I kind of have this thing where like I kind of don't want any big time jumps anymore. Like I
Yeah.
kind of want the post Rise of Skywalker era to develop a little more naturally. Like if we time jump
Mhm.
5 years because like that's how long we haven't had a
Yeah.
movie or a story in that era, and just kind of naturally build the future forward, kind of like what they did in
Mhm.
Legends with Thrawn trilogy and leading all
Yeah.
that. They kind of just naturally build up, and then and then as you say with the past, I kind of like the idea of like let's just naturally build backwards. I mean,
Mhm.
we're dumping back a couple 100 years,
Yeah.
but then start with the Bane, and then
Mhm.
maybe go backwards, and then maybe even further backwards as you kind of keep going.
Yeah.
And then if you really want to time jump and tell here's the first Jedi story, or here's the first time a Jedi and a Sith were created and stuff like that, then
Yeah.
that's fine. Everyone's gonna want that
Like
story eventually, but
the
kind of
Tython Prime Jedi Octo
that stuff. But
this planet.
but that thing, but in Legends, the kind of thing that kind of I don't want to say broke it because I don't think it's broken. I just think it's just interesting and different. Is
Yeah.
1991 Tales of the Jedi, they went back 5,000 years before A New Hope because Phantom Menace wasn't the thing yet, and then George kind of did his backstory, what he thought the Sith were, and then Legends kind of had to take
Yeah.
the two and meet in the middle somewhere. And I think maybe
Yeah.
this time they can kind of just go backwards,
Yeah.
more naturally to the ancient past
And
if they want.
also let the films lead that.
Yeah,
'Cause,
that too.
there's no George Lucas, but there is Taika Waititi. And Taika Waititi, he's not going
Oh,
to
he
be
knows.
bound by any kind of books or anything. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Or who knows? I mean, or someone else we don't know. Maybe John Favreau will want to do the
Yeah.
previs with them.
Yeah.
But
That'd be cool. I'd be there for that. Yeah.
yeah. Anything else? I think we're wrapping up
Yeah.
here. Any last things about the old Republic, the wars of old Republic?
Yeah. It'll be the most interesting thing for me to be how do they
Hmm.
explore good and evil, power and freedom, means and
Hmm.
ends in this other era. Again, I'm with you. I don't want them to go ham and say, "Oh yeah, start 25,000 years ago." They'd be really smart to start with the Tarvez and Bane stories because it's what we have so far,
Or
and
I'll,
then
I'll
build on that.
I'll just
Good.
say I'll say one more thing.
Mm.
They don't have to tell the exact story. Like they don't have to tell like here's Darth Bane as the star of our film, Darth Bane, directed
No.
by yes.
Well, Thrawn
Darth.
isn't the star of the Thrawn trilogy,
But that too. But
the Legends Thrawn trilogy.
but I don't even need this to be the story of Darth Bane.
Hmm.
I could just have it. Here's the Sith War that Bane was a part of. He doesn't even have to be even
Yeah.
in the film. Just here was the Sith War at the time that the Jedi
Hmm.
and the Sith, that last big war that finally like this is why the Jedi think the Sith are extinct. And have that be the story, and then
Yeah.
it's like yay, we won. The Sith are defeated, and maybe you can have it like maybe
Post
run the
credit
jack. But what
scene.
if one has survived?
A post
And
credit scene.
that's something like that. I don't know, but kind of if you don't want to tell the actual Bane story again because we have one in Legends, like just tell the story of the war that he was a part of.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that'd
But
be
maybe
interesting.
yeah. Oh, Hannah, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Glad to contribute to the race side and the flagship. There we go.
And I think, and one more thing. I'm sorry. I love
All
this
good.
discussion.
All good.
And I think also that by doing that, and because the books and stuff are kind of seeding things like Revan and whatnot,
Hmm.
maybe not the seeding, just kind of putting it in there because they like the character.
Yeah.
I think if you're never gonna say who the new Revan is, what Revan is, if they don't go with the Tarviz the whole time thing,
Mhm.
I think it just kind of allows that kind of thing of like, well, you know what, some of this legend stuff could still fit. You know,
Yeah.
what's to say Exar Kun wasn't the Sith Lord of his time? You know, what if his
Yeah.
table shows up in the Solo film in canon? So,
Right.
you know, it's like
Yeah.
we're not going to retell those stories again, but it's like, you know
Mhm.
what? It was thousands of years. A bunch
Yeah.
of stuff probably happened.
What was I gonna say? I know. Well, I mean, Revan. The name Revan is canon, and also, uh, in what was it? In the Obi-Wan Anakin story comic, there. I mean that there's a suggestion that it's Revan. That's what I say. KOTOR remake, which is it's just still Legends, but that's significant that they're actually remaking that if it gets off the ground, if it actually happens. But that's the question. So, okay, we've gone 2 hours and we started half an hour later. I gotta get to work.
Yes.
In
Okay,
about
yeah, we'll wrap up.
7-8 hours. So just putting that out there. Not
Sorry.
7. I can't do math. 9 hours, 8.5 hours.
But this was
the number.
fun.
Yeah, no, it was a great conversation. Very much part and parcel of what we do here at Iron Cannon. Just diving in, speculating, thinking about ideas and concepts, as well as what the stories that we've gotten, the stories we might have. So, Joel, thank you again so much for putting all that Legends look back together. Like basically that's the big chunk of the Old Testament that is Legends, which
I mean, yeah,
in the Christian Bible, the Hebrew Bible is the longest chunk of it. So
I mean, one more thing because it's the theology time. You're right. Like if the Bane backwards is the Old Testament, then Bane war afterwards is the New Testament. I mean, Anakin is the chosen one. So
there we go. There it is. Right. So yeah. Anyways, thank you. Thank you for sticking it out with us, Hannah and everyone else. Let's see comments here. Johan from Chile, good to have you join. Yeah, and everyone else who's checking us out, who's checked us out before in the comments. Yes, thank you, Hannah, for whatever it is you were referring to.
I think you're talking about my Testament analogy.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us on all our different channels. Let us know what you thought of the Legends look back to the Jedi and Sith. What do you think the Jedi and Sith stories will be? Where do you think they're going to start? Where do you think they're going to end? And how do you think that's going to come out? What do you think the Taika Waititi film, if that's going to happen? All the other films. When it comes to films, I'm with Hannah. I'm going to believe it when I'm sitting in the theater, plowing down my Mars bar and chugging on my Coke. 5 minutes to go in the show. Because I saw Avatar tonight, The Way of Water, and 2 Marvel trailers. That's great. Quantumania coming out in a week, and Guardians Volume 3 coming out.
The villain is blue in that one. Oh, wink, oh, wink.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Who else is
And
blue
one
in
of
Star
the villains is gold. Anyway, but yeah, films. Anyway, let us know what you guys think they'll do. Comment below in the comments in whatever platform you're doing. Comment on Twitter. Let us know on Twitter and Instagram at Iron Cannon Pod, or on the Underworld Facebook page, etc. Please do give this video a like and a share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We did this 2 hours ago, so let's do this again. Joel, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID2021, again, JID2021, or at the Ion Cannon Pod, again, at Ion Cannon Pod, where I've been posting a lot of stuff about what the heck happened, how the First Order rose to power. So,
yes. How did the First Order rise to power? Right. Well, check out our Twitter. Read all that. You can find me on Twitter at NEUG485, on Instagram at MNEUG1138, and again, of course, Twitter and Instagram at Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Yeah, check out Tractor Beam. Check out our full episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, check out the whole Fandom Fam, the Star Wars Underworld flagship pod, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy on Wednesdays, and got a shout out to the Rayside. Doing great work over there, Hannah. Yeah, and all and of course in the Discord and all the other ways to get in touch with us. join us Friday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, for the Clone Wars film. So then we're still sorting out what we're doing next week, but we will definitely let you know. We have a few ideas. We're just waiting on some things to some pieces to fall into place, but we will definitely let you know what those are about. But until then, Joel, thanks for bearing with me waiting an extra half hour.
No problem.
Yeah, let me deal with that. There we go. Yeah. Till then, let's blow this thing and head home.